Hey, I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Mission Matters. My name is Adam Torres, and if you'd like to apply to be a guest on the show, just head on over to missionmatters.com and click on Be Our Guest to apply. All right, so today I have Evan Markegard on the line, and he's a founder and managing partner over at AUGC Partners, LLC. And this interview is part of our iConnections series, where we bring you the best of those that attended and participated in iConnections Miami. Evan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Adam.
All right, so we got a lot to talk about today, so I definitely want to get into AUGC and also talk about biotech, hedge fund investing in general, how you got started, and really what your edge is there. So we'll get into that and more. But to get us kicked off here, iConnections in Miami. Have you been in the past? Is this your first time? Give us some of the backstory.
Yeah, certainly. So it was my very first time attending iConnections, and it was my very first time attending Miami. So I was pleasantly surprised with both. I live in San Diego, California, so I'm used to the beaches and nice weather, but I really enjoyed my time in Miami and was able to meet the most interesting and the most number of allocators that I'd ever met at a single event. So it was really, really exceptionally well done and nice weather.
That's great. Yeah, I'm in LA, and that's the first time that I've ever covered this particular conference. We cover Milken Conference, a bunch of other conferences all over the place, but I just kept on getting this. People kept telling me, no, you got to make it. You got to go. iConnections is where it's at. You're going to get some great content, great interviews. I'm like, all right. You hear it enough time, and you're like, you got to go. I'm curious for you, what made it kind of unique for you, being there in the whole just kind of environment? 'Cause it sounds like you had a good experience. What made it unique?
Yeah, I would say the main elements that made the whole experience unique for me was the sheer number of meetings. It's just so nice to be able to pack so many in such an efficient method in just 2 days. And I even arrived earlier and was able to set up additional meetings for people that were in town. So it was a good opportunity to take advantage of the full 4 days, meet a wide variety of allocators, like I mentioned, and it was a high quality group. Every group some of the groups had reviewed my materials ahead of time. Some had prepared questions. They were very serious, very well prepared, and it was just a great experience.
Yeah, they do a good job, and that's awesome. Glad to hear it worked out. Let's switch it up a bit here. I do want to get into what you're doing over at AUGC. First, maybe tell us a little bit more about the fund.
Yeah, definitely. So I manage a biotech fund, and I will make forward-looking statements, so I can always send you my investor presentations if you're interested with my disclosures. But AUGC represents the nucleotides of RNA, so it's a scientific reference back to the naming. We know that RNA are one of the building blocks of life that got very famous with the mRNA vaccines, but we had that name well before the mRNA vaccines for COVID in 2017. So I envision ourselves as being early and very scientific focused. So I have a PhD background, and I launched the fund after graduate school, really based on a lot of fundamentals of digging into scientific investments.
Very curious. So right out of graduate school, where did you see, obviously you were doing research, you're in the middle of it all, you had to have seen some type of need or niche or something. What I'm getting at is what made you feel like this was going to be a business right out of school? That's so interesting to me.
Yeah, really great question to kind of make that leap from science to business, if you will. So I did a oncology PhD in Frank McCormick's lab at UCSF, and the unmet need is really cancer cells, right? There are cells that are dividing uncontrollably, and they can cause death and quality of life detriments in patients. So how can we use science to differentiate the cancer cells from our healthy cells, or reactivate our immune system, or hit that cell in a new way that we've never done before, and essentially use scientific innovation? So that was the unmet need that I saw. In my specific niche, I was studying tumor suppressors and thinking of ways we can put the brakes back on cancer cells, and being able to dig deep into this pathway and present my work at medical meetings and see other cancer companies presenting their work. And that's where my first investments were in oncology, where I felt like I had some expertise because, right, I'm in the cancer center. We have the speakers come, we have the journal clubs. I'm reading papers for my work. I'm really understanding some of the basic mechanisms here and then applying that to the public biotech investing with a few $100s I had extra from grad school.
That's amazing. And so take me down the line. So it starts with yourself. So you're the first investor. What happens next in fund formation and kind of launching and getting people to buy in, right, to the idea?
Yeah, definitely the whole history there. So I was at Genentech previously, so I had some industry experience, and then I went to undergraduate school at Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo in Central California, so not too far from you in the LA area, and I was a microbiology undergrad there. And so that's a little bit more of my scientific underpinnings, and I was just so fascinated about how you could really make scientific discoveries and then apply those in a very translational method to improve human health. That's still my motivating mission at AUGC. And so that was the initial interest, and starting to manage, like I mentioned, my own money and doing well, having those positive feedback loops, and then also managing some money for family members, and then basically got the opportunity to roll that into a hedge fund. And I had mentorship along the way too. So my initial inspiration was actually a investor called Peter Kolczynski from RA Capital, which is a $14 billion hedge fund, and he launched his hedge fund after graduate school, and he had a lot of these scientific underpinnings. So he inspired me. I read an article about him on the news outlets, and I was like, oh, wow, that is so interesting. And I reached out to him, too, by just cold email him, and he got back to me, and we were able to have some conversations and some advice on how to think about biotech investing. And so that's a little bit more of the origin story, and then it was just a matter of rolling up that friends and family money and launching the hedge fund structure. And that's what I've been doing now for over 8 years.
Man, what a great story. I love this. What do you feel like you have a biotech edge in investing based on your background and otherwise? I'm curious. Do you feel like you have an edge there?
Yeah, I think that's critical whenever you talk to hedge funds, because you have to be doing something that everyone else isn't doing. And so what gave me the initial confidence, because it was daunting, right? It's a competitive industry and there's lots of smart people doing similar things. So how do you start to differentiate yourself? And back to the origin story almost with cancer, where I was really understanding the pathways of cancer and talking to the experts and attending the medical meetings and reading the papers, a lot of this deep fundamental due diligence, if you will. That's where I initially got my edge and was outperforming in biotech. And some of those were the glory days too back then of initial oncogenes. And if we could hit those oncogenic driver in the cancer cell that the cancer cell is addicted to, we could kill that cancer cell. So it was really a nice period of time. There was antibody drug conjugates where you could take a chemotherapy and hook that up to an antibody that just binds to the cell surface receptor and gets internalized in a cancer cell and not healthy cells. And that chemotherapy is just hitting that cancer cell, not going throughout the body, hitting the healthy cells. So you have a large therapeutic window. So these innovations, this initial footprint into the industry is really what captured my interest and was able to lead to more positive investments. And a lot of times, given my scientific background, these were earlier and smaller stage companies, right? Because you can invest across the entire spectrum of biotech. You can do commercial and you can do venture capital even before they come to the public markets. But I kind of sit in the middle and then focus on the smaller cap companies, kind of the newer IPOs or the phase 1, phase 2 clinical trials, where I'm taking more of that scientific and early clinical risk. That's really where I've carved out a niche for me on the science and the small caps. And then the third and final layer I'll leave you with is the value investing principles. So I started investing actually when I was a teenager. My grandpa gave me some money and I read Warren Buffett and Seth Klarman and focused on margin of safety and compounding and risk mitigation. So even before biotech, I was familiar with the stock market and watching Jim Cramer, like understanding what individual investors could do and how the whole Wall Street machine works and how he picks stocks. And so focusing on some of those elements, like staying in my circle of competence, taking a long time horizon. I'm not just trading in and out, but I'll take multi-year time horizons. If I believe a company is undervalued, getting back to the probabilities of the market and the probabilities that are internal to AGC and capitalizing on that variant perception and that dislocation, especially these smaller names. And a lot of times these smaller names too, Adam, they don't trade as much. There's not as much volume. So a lot of these big players that have grown to multi-billions, they don't have the liquidity to invest in these smaller companies. So you start to create this niche for yourself where you have the potential to outperform like I have the last 8 years.
Wow, what an amazing story. And I'm curious, and I'll timestamp this one for us. So just for everybody listening, just so you know, we're recording this on Tuesday, March 24th, 2026. So I'm curious, Evan, from your lens, what's interesting to you? Like, what's exciting you right now in the market? And you can say a company name, you cannot, whatever you want to disclose, however you want to take that question. But whether it's a technology or otherwise, like, what excites you right now?
Yeah, I would say broadly innovation, because biotech, even though the sector broadly is underperformed relatively the last several years compared to tech, especially with the AI boom, but biotech has constant amount of innovation and new scientific discoveries. We have this amazing academic powerhouse combined with venture capital funding that leads to all these public companies. So finding new pathways or new modalities, that's what really gets me excited. And then being able to understand that there is a large pharma appetite structurally for these innovative companies. They've essentially outsourced R&D to the smaller companies, and they need a lot of acquisitions to keep their pipelines going, especially with upcoming patent cliffs. And so this combination of the smaller cap company, right, the underdog, the scientific startup coming with something new, taking risk, and I do invest in a fairly high-risk sector because these companies can have a drug fail and the stock's down 100%. So that's a risk I'm very comfortable with. But finding those hidden gems, finding those small, innovative companies that are able to crack the code and have really meaningful clinical activity and that excitement, that gets me so excited for patients and the potential to really help people and revolutionize those living with difficult diseases. And then you have a pharma company that can come in and bring in that asset, have the commercial team, the reimbursement, all the global reach that you need to help patients. And so it's really a beautiful environment and structure. And I just love finding the innovative hidden gems before the pharma companies and before that validating data.
Do you enjoy, and I'm guessing for some of these companies, you obviously have direct access just based on the size and otherwise, but I guess what I'm getting at is, do you enjoy like working with and learning about the companies and like the founders and like kind of getting your hands dirty in there? Because you have to at the stage that you're investing in for some of these. I'm guessing. Am I off on that? Do you enjoy that piece?
Of course. No, of course. Yeah, it's an important part of the job. And so I really do enjoy hearing the stories and the background. And for example, just to give you some context, you have iConnections, right? This huge event with so many allocators and funds. And we have something similar in the biotech industry called the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference in San Diego. In San Francisco. And it's a really great conference up in San Francisco where you're able to have all the companies and all the funds in one city at one time. And we had almost 40 meetings there this last January. So getting to have they are rapid fire. So there's just a ton of information at once. And I really enjoy that. I think that's why I enjoyed iConnections so much and how fast-paced and crammed full of interesting information it is.
So, you're not sitting around saying, what do you do? What do you do? Yeah, it's not that kind of conference.
No. You prepped ahead of time. So you have the questions and you know what's important. And you get to meet the team in person and talk to them eye to eye. I really enjoy the in-person contact. And being in San Diego, it's one of the biotech hubs as well, in addition to San Francisco and Boston. And so even just last week, I met with the CEO and team of a company here in San Diego and was able to review their data. They don't have any efficacy data yet for their program, but there is a pharma that has validated the target and they have a potentially differentiated approach. And so digging into, do you have something that's better, that's more innovative, that could help patients in a more important way and potentially a safer way? And so elements like that, understanding the background of that story, the company, the asset, the target, the biology, reading the papers, the patents. There's just so much information in this industry, and it's fun to consume it and hear the stories of the people that are actually creating and operating these new therapies through clinical development.
Yeah, I love it. Evan, this has been a lot of fun having you on today. I really enjoyed learning more about yourself, your background, your craft, AUGC. How do people, for those that are listening, if they're interested and they want to learn more about your fund, how do they do that?
Yeah, the best way would be to email me, which is my first name, Evan, EVAN, at augcbiofund.com, all one word. So that's my email, and that's how you get in direct contact with me. You could also find me on LinkedIn, Evan Markegard, Markegard. Those are the two easiest ways to contact me, and we can set up a time to chat more about my strategy, and I can send you my investor deck where you can see my outperformance, my case studies, and a little bit more about my scientific background, the small mid-cap therapeutic niche that I invest in, and also this margin of safety value investing principle approach that I apply and that I think is fairly unique to biotech investing as a whole.
Wonderful. For everybody listening, just so you know, we'll definitely put some of that contact info in the show notes so you can just head right on over and connect with Evan. And speaking of the audience, if this is your first time with Mission Matters and you haven't done it yet, hit that subscribe or follow button. This is a daily show. Yes, you heard me right, daily. Each and every day we're bringing you new content, new ideas, and hopefully new inspiration to help you along the way in your journey as well. So hit that subscribe or follow button. We have plenty of great interviews planned for you. We don't want you to miss a thing. And Evan, man, been a lot of fun having you on today. Appreciate all you do, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, Adam. Great questions. Enjoyed the conversation, and look forward to speaking next time.